something for me, because I've wondered about it, and I want to know, what is your definition of a well-regulated militia, as stated in the Second Amendment, and using supporting detail, explain to me how Let me finish. And using supporting detail, explain to me how an 18-year-old with a military rifle is well regulated. And the world, our country, our nation is going to grade your answer.
Well, by all means. And I want to say as well, as a parent, I see my kids and these students. I see my kids and the students that are here today. What you went through is horrid. I'm not going to pretend to understand what you went through. There are no words for it. It's monstrous, and nobody should have to endure that. I want to answer your question. George Mason was one of the founders, and he said the militia is the whole of the people. It's every man, it's every woman. That is who the militia is. In the context of the time, a well-regulated militia meant an American man, an American woman, a citizen of the United States of America, who could operate and service their firearm.
How is an 18-year-old, that was in the context of the time.
Yes.
How now is an 18-year-old with a military assault rifle well regulated? Use supporting detail.
Right. He shouldn't have been able to get a firearm. He should have been barred from getting a firearm. And he should not have been able to. He should not have been able to purchase a firearm.
So what are you, the men, are going to do about it?
Let me answer. If we're here to have a discussion, that's why I'm here. I want you to ask me every question. I want you to give me every question you have.
Let's have some respect. She's here to answer the questions. Let's let her answer the questions.
He should, A, never been able to get a firearm. B, people who are crazy should not be able to get firearms. C, people who are dangerous to themselves and other individuals should not be able to obtain a firearm. There isn't a loophole. It's a criminal act, and that's what we have to start calling it. We have to start, number one, following up on red flags. 39 times in the past year, it was law enforcement or it was social services that went to this individual's home. Now, there are two Florida statutes. One of them, I don't know if the comment that he had put on YouTube would have qualified for you to Baker Act him, but sending messages telling other students that he was going to murder them and he was going to kill them, I would think certainly would qualify under a Florida state statute for you to have Baker Acted him.
Let me respond to that. First of all, we've talked about the Broward Sheriff's Office and some other local agencies and the FBI getting tips and what have you. America, there's one person responsible for this act. That's the detestable, violent killer. He is responsible for this act. Nobody else but him. There's three things we need to do in America to keep America safe. Number one, we have to use, through crime prevention, through environmental design, build schools differently so they're harder to penetrate. Number two, we need to be empowering police officers and deputy sheriffs throughout the nation to be able to take people who are an immediate threat to themselves or an immediate threat to someone else to be examined. And we need to take guns away from them forever. They should never get them back. They should have to go through a psychological evaluation. And if we have a doctor or a clinician have to sign their John Hancock and say that person should be given back their Second Amendment right, we're not going to see doctors do that. But lastly, we do need to have some gun control reform. 18-year-olds should never have a rifle. An 18-year-old kid should not have a rifle. 18-year-old kid, they're not adults yet. They're in high school. These kids should not have a rifle. Bump stocks should be illegal. They should be outlawed forever. Automatic rifles should be outlawed forever. And anybody who says different, I don't know about other people, but Emma and I, we're calling BS on that. So.
Earlier tonight, I'm going right to you. Earlier tonight, Senator Rubio said that he supported the notion of raising the legal purchasing age from 18 to 21 for semi-automatic weapons. That is not the position of the NRA. Why is it not your position?
Well, it's not the position of the NRA because I think that if we are asking young men and women to go and serve their country, that they should be able to also have a firearm. I'm also thinking of young women.
There is a military exemption. There is a military exemption.
True, but with specifically where it relates to long guns, because it's 21 for handguns, 18 for long guns. But I also think of young women, and you've had a previous town hall where you spoke with a young woman named Kim Corbin, who was a college student who was brutally raped in her dorm, and she was under the age of 21. And one of the things that she speaks out about loudly now is how she wished she would have had the ability to be able to have a shotgun, whatever it was, to be able to defend herself. I was 20 years old when I lived on my own. I didn't live with my parents when I was 20. I lived on my own when I was 20 years old. And I didn't, well, not at first, but I mean, I had a shotgun. But I think that we have to take that into consideration. We have to think about individuals. I mean, if you're old enough to vote, you're old enough to drive a car, you're old enough to serve your country, I think that you are old enough if, now here's the caveat, if anyone wants to listen to the caveat. The caveat, though, Jake, and for everybody out there, is if you are not a danger to yourself or others. That's what it comes back to. If you are not a threat to yourself or your community, that is what it comes back to.
Hey, Chris, you're serving. How do you feel? You're going to the military. You're 18.
Okay.
How do you feel about
Cameron,
that?
it's okay. I want to go to Alyssa. I'm sorry. I want to go to Lori Alhadeff, who lost her daughter, Alyssa, in the shooting. Alyssa was 14. She was a soccer player. And Lori has a question for Dana. Lori.
Please hold all applause to the end. Wake up, America. Fight for the survival of your children. Fight for the right to go to school and to feel safe. No child should ever turn to their mother at 6 years of age and ask, "Mommy, am I going to die today?" My name is Lori Alhadeff. My daughter is Alyssa Alhadeff. She lost her life at school, shot 3 times, and she was not able to be identified until 2 a.m. on the morning of February 15th, along with 16 other parents who lost their children. I am tired of people doing nothing. This horrific incident has to be the catalyst that finally puts things in action. Let's make our schools safe again. Hashtag Alyssa Alhadeff. In 2013, the NRA released a 225-page report to call for more security at schools. It detailed security guards, teacher training, bomb-sniffing dogs, expanded police presence in schools. Here we are 5 years later, and nothing has been done. Our teachers need to be properly trained to teach our children how to handle a code red. We can visually mark hiding areas in the classrooms to protect our children from being gunned down. Where are our metal detectors? Where is our bulletproof glass? Where are children's ID badges with the photos, names, and the ability to open locked doors? Where are the new versions of Amber Alerts before school safety? Where are the lists of things to do and the ability to do them that every school needs to have in order to provide safety for our kids? Where is the funding to protect the ones who will be the future of our nation? Who is funding the safety protocols? How are state and federal teams working together? How do the local police forces support our schools? Who will lead the programs to pass new laws that require security cameras, bulletproof shields in classrooms, more drills for teachers to help manage things such as things that they have faced? Where are the school psychologists? Who is helping to put a plan for that in place? And why hasn't anything been done since Sandy Hook? How many more of these do we need to endure before something happens? We need an emergency meeting now. Put politics aside and put our children first. I don't want to see another parent lose a child in this senseless way. I want us to all send our kids to school with the feeling of security In the name of hashtag Alyssa Al-Hadef and the 16 others who lost their lives, and the thousands who were traumatized and are speaking up for their rights, we must bring about change, clear calls to action to make our schools safe again. How do the NRA and lawmakers work together? Who is going to pay for this? What is the plan to put things into action? These are my questions, and we all want a clear answer. Enough talk! What is your action?
So, in 2013, the NRA did release its National School Shield Task Force major recommendations. What did happen with them?
150 schools across the country have implemented them so far. It's up to the schools and the parents of those schools if they want to use those resources and they want to use those suggestions in order to, as this mother was suggesting, and those were great questions. The NRA has also partnered with law enforcement. In fact, this organization is one of the biggest partners of law enforcement. We've trained thousands of law enforcement members all across the country, and we're still expanding. And this is one of the things that I want to make clear as well. I think it's up to schools and parents to determine what they want to do in their schools. The NRA is not going to make that decision. If they want to have armed guards, if they want to have retired military, if they choose and teachers volunteer to be armed, I think that's up to each individual school and the parents of that school district. But if they also want a solution that doesn't involve firearms, if they want to talk about checkpoint systems, if they want to talk about reinforcing doors, the NRA, our resources are at their disposal. That's what School Shield was created for.
Sheriff?
I agree with what Dana said, but I think the problem is too many people want to do the same old, same old. The author said that doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is insanity. We as this country, we need to do something different. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But let's try doing something different. Let's try and set if you have a football team and they're getting burnt deep, you're going to not let the same receiver beat them, but you're going to give them some help. You're going to bring a safety over the top. You're going to do something different. And what I think we need to do in America is something different and have less guns on our streets, not more guns.
Yeah, I'm just going to give Dana the chance to rebut, and then we'll go to the next question.
We had 3 lawmakers on this stage, and only one of them hinted at reinforcing the background check system. It is only as good as the record submitted to it. Only one of them even got anywhere close to mentioning that. We have to have more than 38 states submit records. That's number one. Number 2, we have to develop better protocol to follow up on red flags. This monster carrying bullets to school, carrying knives to school, assaulting students, assaulting his parents, 39 visits in the past year. That should never have been allowed to get that far. And I don't have the authority or the resources to follow up on that. If you want to give me the authority and resources, I'll follow up on those red flags. But I don't have that authority to do so. This is why we have to start asking these questions. I want to see your network ask these questions. I want to see these headlines in the media more. We have to follow up on protocol, and why are the states not complying with this law?
So let's talk about red flags. The next question comes from Jim Gard. He's a math teacher. He had taught 3 of the victims, and he has a question for Sheriff Israel.
Sheriff Israel, as far as I know, the FBI would be the expert organization and would have the experience and know-how to take tips, conduct an investigation, and conclude whether to act or not to act on such tips. It seems as though the FBI certainly had enough cause to investigate the case prior to the 17 murders. It's fair to say that people are disgusted with the inaction of this organization. Why were these tips considered unimportant enough to not have further action? Who would make this decision? As the FBI apologized for their failure to act upon these tips, who ultimately would be the person who decided that this now very relevant case was irrelevant.
So, Sheriff, obviously this is a question for the FBI. I want to point out that we did invite the FBI director and somebody from the field office in Miami to come here tonight to answer your questions. They declined, but their excuse is that this is part of an ongoing investigation. But if you would address what you can about the red flags, not just the tips called into the FBI, but also the visits by the police to the shooter's house. How does that, Dana's talking about getting those red flags into some sort of system to prevent that person from being able to buy a firearm. How would that work? It obviously didn't in this case. How should it work?
Yeah, let me start out by saying that if we had this conversation 2 or 3, 4 years ago, I would say the primary group of people, the primary industry that's going to protect our children are law enforcement. Now I actually believe it's the lawmakers. Things have to change in Washington, D.C., Tallahassee, and state capitals to make these changes. The Broward Sheriff's Office, we received tips, numerous tips on this killer. Some we answered by phone, some were out of state, some we went out there. Our command staff are actually looking into some of these tips to make sure we did everything right. If we made a mistake, I'll act accordingly and deal with it. The person responsible is the agent or the detective or the person who received the tip and didn't exercise their due diligence and took it where they needed to be. All that being said, what I'm asking the lawmakers to give police all over this country is more power. In Florida, we call it a Baker Act. It allows us to take an individual to be against their will, involuntarily, to go to a mental health facility and be treated. What I'm saying is if a police officer that we pay a good salary to keep us safe feels that the totality of circumstances, the computer, the bedroom, the pictures, the photographs, speaking to the friends, if we feel the totality of the circumstances rises to the level where we're concerned this person might be mentally ill, we need the power to take every firearm they have away from them and bring them to a mental health facility.
39 visits did not meet that standard? 39 visits, assaulting students, assaulting parents, taking bullets and knives to school. Did that not meet that standard?
Well, which are you speaking about specifically? You seem to know about all 39.
Well, I know there's one Florida statute where if he's sending messages threatening, if he's sending messages threatening to kill people, that right there, under Florida state law.
Who did he send the message to kill people to?
BuzzFeed, AP, Reuters, Yahoo News, all reported that was to other students.
Who was the victim?
It was sent to other students.
Dana, Reuters can't be a victim. The only person who could be a victim is an individual.
Sheriff, is what I'm saying.
So if an individual was threatened and it was real, that's a crime. But if he's posting things...
They were threatened with death. They were threatened that they were going to bleed. They were threatened that they were going to be killed.
Well, what's your specific case?
And he had already taken bullets and knives to school. He had already assaulted people. He assaulted his parent. He assaulted other students. 39 visits, and this was known to the intelligence and law enforcement community. Now, I'm not saying that you can be everywhere at once, but this is what I'm talking about. We have to follow up on these red flags.
You're not the litmus test.
Doesn't that meet the standard?
You're absolutely not the litmus test for how law enforcement should follow up. You're wrong. There weren't 39 visits. Some of them, they were GOA. Some of them called from other states. To say there were 39 visits, I don't know where you got those facts, but you're completely wrong.
Did they report it inaccurately?
They reported it inaccurately, but if you're going to stand up in front of a national audience, you shouldn't rely on a media.
This is what I'm asking.
It's incorrect. We are looking at every single case we got. We are following up on it. We will decide and discern what deputies did, what investigators did, and I will handle it accordingly, and people will be punished if they didn't do what they were supposed to do. But that being said, the power of police is not as great as it should be. We need to take people out of their homes and involuntarily Baker Act them if the totality of circumstances rise and they're not an immediate threat to themselves or someone else. But here's the most important point. If you and I our sport was tennis and we tore our ACLs, the doctor would say, surgery was successful, you're released from the hospital. We can't go back and play tennis the next day. We need to rehabilitate. When we release an individual from a mental health facility, they're not ready to go out and carry a gun. They have to rehabilitate, and that's a year process, a 2-year process, and they should never be around firearms. That's where I agree with you. It's making sure people, but it's not one thing anymore. It's 3 or 4 things. It's building schools differently. It's having our mayors and our commissioners give more money to police, more money to fires, and more money to school teachers. Those are the most underpaid people in the world.
And funding to reinforce schools.
Exactly, yes.
I want to go now to Linda Beagle-Shulman. She lost her son, Scott Beagle. He was a geography teacher who died protecting his students, and she has a question for Dana. Linda.
Dana, the Second Amendment was ratified in 1791. The Declaration of Independence was written in 1776, which gave my son the unalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I ask you, why are my son's unalienable rights not protected as fiercely as the right to bear arms?
I'm sorry for what you experienced. And I'm not going to, as I said, I'm a parent, but I have not been in this position. And as a parent, it terrifies me, to be honest with you. It's terrifying. Now, you asked whether it's a life or firearms or life or Second Amendment thing. I think that all life should be protected. All life should be protected. That's why next week there's going to be good guys with guns that are going to be in school protecting lives, just as there's armed security here. We are in the presence of firearms protecting lives. This isn't if you believe in your right to self-defense, you hate kids, or if you believe in your right to self-defense, you don't believe that people have the right to live. That's not what this issue is. This issue is about making sure that we're protecting innocent lives. No innocent lives should be lost. None of them should.
When the Second Amendment was ratified, they were talking about muskets. We're not talking about muskets. We're talking about assault weapons. We're talking about weapons of mass destruction that kill people.
On that issue, at the time, there were fully automatic firearms that were available, the Belton gun and the Puckle gun, and in fact, the Continental Congress reviewed a purchase of one of those firearms for the...
Doesn't make it right.
Well, what I'm saying is there was more than just muskets available. We don't say that no one has a right to free speech because of Twitter or social media. But the point that you raised, and I think it's a good one, and I know what you're saying, and believe me, I understand that. I think all innocent lives should be protected. I don't think that you should have ever had to gone through that. If I could change time and change circumstances, I would have done everything in my power to prevent that.
I think you have the power.
Sheriff, did you want to weigh in?
Columbine, Sandy Hook, Stoneman Douglas, and a host of other tragedies. Doing it the same way isn't working. And I could tell you, you're not going to change, with all due respect, and I think you're an amazing woman, you're not going to change her mind. There's only one way to make America safely. What you're going to have to do, as I said, this young generation, we didn't get it done, but you will get it done. Vote in people who feel the same way you do.
One point. This is the 8th tragedy. The 8th tragedy where we have seen numerous tips that have been reported and red flags that are we talking about prevention or not? I think it's incredibly important.
Keep going.
In Charleston, they had to come out and say that it was a paperwork error, that this individual was a prohibited possessor. In South Carolina, you have to be charged with a felony, not just convicted, but charged with a felony. And he should have never been able to purchase the firearm. The worst school shooting with the murderer in Virginia, this individual was court-ordered to undergo mental health evaluations, and he slipped through the cracks. He would have never been able to purchase if this had been known. This is what I'm talking about in terms of prevention and making sure that people who are dangerous should not have access to firearms without punishing law-abiding Americans who want to be able to have that same right to defend themselves.
I want to thank Dana Loesch of the NRA and also Sheriff Scott Israel for being here to listen to your questions. When we come back, a powerful moment with the students of Stoneman Douglas that you will not want to miss. Please stay with us.